In my Steam Deck videos, I talked about how much I enjoy using the Steam Deck for emulation, and I got a lot of comments asking what I use to emulate on the Steam Deck, and when I've talked about how simple it is, what I'm using that makes it so simple. So whether you've heard about it or not, EmuDeck is the solution to all of those problems. It makes emulation on the Steam Deck so easy, where someone who's never done emulation before can get it running in about 10-15 minutes. And it just handles everything for you. It makes everything super simple, and it allows for updating to be super simple as well. EmuDeck is this all-in-one tool which sets up all the emulator installs, does all the configuration for you, does all the game imports for you, allows you to set up hotkeys and has default setup hotkeys as well, and a bunch of other things. EmuDeck also has an incredible wiki which has a full walkthrough of how to do everything I'm about to tell you, as well as a bunch of FAQs, and if you get stuck with something, they probably have an answer there, so you may as well want to check it out. So let's get into what you need to get this done. Obviously, you're going to need your Steam Deck, you're going to need your ROMs and BIOS files. Now, these are all protected by copyright, and I cannot tell you where to get these. It is extremely difficult. You should only be using games that you own, that you're copying directly onto your stuff. There are no other places to get these games and these BIOS files, absolutely nowhere. You're going to want to make sure that you have adequate storage. So I personally like having a large SD card. Originally when I got the deck, I had one SD card that was only 128 gigs, and that was just for emulation. And then I had another one that was 256 gigs, and that was for my Steam games. I've since ditched having two different SD cards, and I got a 512 gig one, which makes my life a lot simpler. I could just put all my Steam games and my emulation games all on there at the same time. I will leave links in the description for some great SD cards to check out. If you want to go ahead and use those are affiliate links, and they do help me out. Also, having a USB will make this a lot easier. If you're going to be using a USB-A, you either have to have a USB-C dongle that allows you to plug USB-A into it, or some kind of USB-A to USB-C adapter, or you can have a USB like I have, which is both USB-C and USB-A. Super handy. I use this on my Switch. I use this on my Steam Deck. I use it on my phone. Super, super handy to have in these days. And this is a pretty big one. It's 256 gigs, so it handles everything pretty well. Just as with the SD cards, I will leave links down to some great USB sticks down in the description. So as you can see here on my Steam Deck, if we go over to collections, you'll be able to see all of my collections that include all of my categories in Steam. And as you can see here, I have some PlayStation, I have some Nintendo 64, and got a few games on here, and they're also all visible in the non-Steam. But to get this whole process started, we're gonna have to go ahead and go to the desktop mode, so go ahead and do that. So I actually uninstalled all of my EmuDeck stuff in order to do this tutorial. You can see there's an uninstall log here. But if you're going to be updating EmuDeck, it's very simple. All you have to do is launch the application and it'll update itself, even to the newest version, which is awesome. And the first place you're going to want to go to is the EmuDeck website. Now, on this website, you'll be able to see a whole bunch of information. As I mentioned, there's the installation guide, which is awesome. There's the FAQs, and then that wiki that I mentioned about earlier. But we're just going to go ahead and go to download, and we're going to go to download the EmuDeck installer. It's going to tell you to copy it to the desktop and launch it, so we're going to do that. So we're going to go ahead and open up our folder. We're going to grab this, we're going to drag it to our desktop. We're going to move here. Now we're going to minimize everything. We're going to see EmuDeck desktop. You're going to double click that. It's going to say, hey, warning, if you don't trust this program, blah, blah, blah. You can trust it, so go ahead and press continue. It's going to go ahead and run some stuff in the console. And we're going to get our pop-up for EmuDeck. So it's going to download the rest of the files. Should be pretty quick. All right, once you get to here, easy mode, if you don't care about customizing your configuration, you can go ahead and choose that. I'm going to choose custom mode so that I can show you all of the things that it is going to pre-configure for you and things that you can change if you'd like. So EmuDeck recently got a pretty major update in 2.1. This is 2.14. but the 0.4 was just a couple of fixes to things. But in 2.1, you got the EmuDeck store, which has a bunch of their homebrew games, all free, which is really nice. They changed the UI so that everything kind of flows across all of EmuDeck. Originally, EmuDeck and the ROM installer kind of had different UIs. The ROM installer looked like an entirely different program, whereas now the UI is very consistent, which is really, really nice. They have support for new emulators like MelonDS, MGBA, and a CMU app image, and a few others, which is really, really nice. This USB transfer wizard is awesome. It makes transferring games from another computer to your Steam Deck much easier if you use a USB, which is great. They support EmulationStation 2.0, which is really, really great, and we'll talk about EmulationStation a little bit more later. The new UI also allows you to manage emulators a lot easier than it used to, so that's great. You can migrate your installations. You have cloud services, so things like Amazon Prime, Plex, Netflix, and all that kind of stuff. You can install them directly to your Steam Deck, which makes it really nice. The ROM manager, as I mentioned, looks a lot nicer, has hotkeys built into it, just looks really, really great, really smooth, and performance-wise, I think it works a lot better as well. And they automatically add Steam profiles now, which is really, really nice. All right, so let's hop into the custom modes. We're gonna go to continue. We're gonna choose where our ROM directory is. So I'm gonna choose my SD card. We're gonna go next. We're installing this on the Steam Deck. So we're gonna go next. Here is where you can choose what emulators you want. This is gonna be the default, and this is actually what I would suggest you do. Unless there are particular emulators that you do not wanna use, I highly suggest at least having EmulationStation. But I like having a bunch of different ones so I can play around with them. I actually am going to do MGBA as well, and I think that's it for me, but you can go ahead and select or deselect whichever ones you want. You can also install them or manage them later, and I'll show you that as well. So this is now allowing you to pull in their custom configurations for all of these. So even ones that you don't have installed, you can have selected, and the configurations will be there. Entirely up to you. I'm just going to leave this one default as is. Autosave is a really awesome feature, and what it allows you to do is basically use retro games very similarly to the way that new games work, where if you go ahead and exit the game and then you resume it later, it will load a save state and bring you back to exactly where you were instead of having to go through a menu and be loaded into a particular checkpoint. So we're actually going to turn this one on. I really like this feature. If you have a Retro Achievements account, you can go ahead and set that up. It's a community-led achievement website that allows you to have achievements for a lot of retro games. So if you have that, you can go ahead and set that up. It's no problem, and it is free. So another really cool thing is that they have bezels for a bunch of different systems here. You can see the systems that they have it for, and a lot of games that are in 3x4 or 4x4 will have black bars on the side, and this kind of just adds a little bit of aesthetic to it and gets rid of just those boring black bars and kind of makes it look like you're looking at a console. I like having it on, so I'm going to leave it on. This goes back to the whole aspect ratios. So you can have things keep aspect ratio, or you can stretch it out a little bit. I personally don't like stretching them out very much, but you can if you want to. I'm going to keep mine at 4x3. And I'm going to do that for all of these going forward. You can have a bunch of different resolutions. But again, for this one, I'm just going to keep it on the default 4x3. Same thing with the N64 and the Dreamcast. Same thing for the GameCube. Now here, you can add kind of like a video filter that kind of emulates what a CRT would look like. I'm not a huge fan of it. I like keeping it off, but if you do like that look, you can turn it on. Again, just for other systems, you can keep it on or off. I like keeping it off. It doesn't really make a big difference to me. Now here, you can set your EmulationStation theme. So there's Modern, there's RBS Simple, and there's Epic Noir. RBS Simple is the original EmulationStation. I like doing Epic Noir, and then I can go ahead in EmulationStation and do a new theme, download new themes. I'll show you that later, but we'll start off with Epic Noir. And here is a summary of all the things that we've chosen or not chosen. So it'll tell you all of the emulators, all of the configurations, the customizations that we've chosen, and where we're going to install it to. Once you click finish, it's going to go ahead and do all that for you. You can go get a coffee, go get a water, go take a quick walk. This is only going to take about 5 minutes, and once this is done, we can go into showing you how EmuDeck works and EmulationStation. This is where EmuDeck saves the most amount of time, because normally all of these things would be done by you manually, and it could take hours to do this, whereas EmuDeck does it in about 5 minutes, does it all for you, grabs everything, all the emulations, all the configurations, all those things, bundles it all really nicely together, and this is one of the biggest benefits of it. The ROM manager is another big benefit, and I'll show you why. All right, that actually got finished much quicker than expected. And now we can go ahead and add games. If any of these fail, you can go ahead and redo the installation. It shouldn't be an issue. I've never had it fail though. So you should be okay unless you lose internet or something. So if you click add games, it's going to bring you into the USB transfer wizard that I mentioned earlier. So we can go ahead and choose a USB to transfer our games. We're going to have this one here, and we're going to choose the ROMs file. And that ROMs folder, what it's going to do, I'm not going to do this now because it's going to overwrite what I already have. But what it's going to do is it's going to create a ROMs folder, and it's going to create all of the subfolders for all of the different emulators within there. So if I go ahead and show you what that looks like, this is what it looks like. And this is a little bit difficult to understand if you don't know all the names of all the emulators, but this is all the emulators, and this is where they will go ahead and look for those ROM files. And if you go down to the systems.txt, it'll actually tell you what each of them is without using the short form or the abbreviation. So this is a really awesome file. And then if you go into any of these folders, it'll also include a systems info that'll tell you any of the supported file extensions, what this one is for, and a bunch of this other stuff that you don't really need to worry about. So what you would do is you would, after you do this, you would eject your drive by using the eject or unmount. You would bring this over to your computer. You would transfer all of your legally acquired ROMs into these folders, and then you're able to just copy these folders into where EmuDeck goes ahead and stores. So this is the location that it will install by default, and what I suggest you do is favorite this folder, make it very easy to access later, because what you're going to do is you're going to go into these ROMs all the time, update games, remove games, do what have you. As you can see here, I've got my N64 games in here, I've got my PlayStation games in here, and everything lives in here in terms of ROMs. And then everything lives in here in terms of BIOS files. So I have everything set up and brought over. If you want a little bit more information about how the BIOS files work, check out the wiki. It has a really good thing to tell you about how to install BIOS files. Again, I cannot tell you how to get these. These are things that you have to legally get. And it's a very simple process once you do that. So once you have your BIOS and your ROM files in the correct folders, you can go back to EmuDeck, and let's just walk through some of these things. So again, here's that USB transfer wizard if you want to go ahead and set up a new USB with those folders. The quick settings is kind of going through some of those settings that we went through on the initial launch. So as I mentioned, you can change these at any time. You're never fully committing to a decision, so that's really great. Within managing emulators, you can update all your emulators from right here. So you would update your flat packs and update the app images separately. This is a super handy tool as well. Makes things really, really easy. But then you can also manage all of the emulators themselves separately. So I can manage RetroArch. It's telling me, hey, all of my PS1 BIOS is missing, my Saturn BIOS is missing, and it will yell at me for that. If you do have your BIOS, it'll tell you that you have your BIOS and you're good to go. If not, like the other one, it'll tell you that it's missing. So this is a really great screen. You're not going to be in here very often, but it is great when you're doing your initial setup. This is also a really great place to reset something. So if you do make a configuration change that ends up becoming a problem for you, you can reset it to default and then go ahead and make new changes. It makes it very easy. The EmuDeck store is where you would get all of those homebrew games. These are all free open source games that people create for free They work on different systems and stuff like that. Very, very nice. I haven't played any of these, but they are there for you, where you don't have to go ahead and download any ROMs. You can just play some retro style games. So for the tools, the Steam ROM Manager is going to be the one that you're going to interact with the most. We'll go over that one after. The quick reset will just very quickly reset everything back to defaults, which is really nice. You can do a custom reset where you only reset certain things. Power Tools is a very handy tool within SteamOS. I'll show you what this looks in gaming mode. I've had this previously, but you would end up having to need your sudo password if you don't have it installed, and this will go ahead and install it for you. Power Tools allows you to do a lot of things. It allows you to enable and disable CPU threads and SMT. It allows you to set maximum and minimum CPU frequencies. It allows you to do the same for the GPU. You can cap your battery charge rate. It displays a lot more supplemental info. It's a very, very handy tool, and I highly suggest you have it installed. Decky Controls is another one. This is one that allows you to see all of the EmuDeck controls and hotkeys while you're gaming. Super handy to have. I highly suggest this one as well. The gyroscope just allows you to use your Steam Deck gyroscope while using emulation. So if you're playing games that are for the Nintendo Switch, for example, for the Wii, for the Wii U, this allows the gyroscope in the Steam Deck to interact with those emulators, and so you can use gyroscope aiming, for example. The EmuDeck compressor is a really awesome tool. This one allows you to compress games for a bunch of different systems, from the PSX, Sega, Saturn, all those into much smaller form factors. This is really great to save some storage space, especially if you have a lot of those games. Some of them are very large. The PSX, PS2, GameCube, and Wii games are some of the largest that I have. So it is great that it allows you to compress all of those. And it does it all automatically for you, which is great. So the BIOS checker is a better area to go ahead and check where all your BIOS files are. So as you can see, I don't have a PS1, but I have my PS2, I have my Nintendo Switch, don't have a Sega, Saturn, Nintendo DS, so on. So this is a really good way to check and see if the BIOS files that you have are working properly. And if they aren't, then you can go ahead and legally go and get your BIOS files. Cloud backup is if you want to go ahead and do those cloud saves that I mentioned earlier. This is really awesome. It works with a bunch of different cloud services. And the save files are really small, so you're not really going to have a big hit on your overall storage. I do suggest it, especially if you like hopping between systems. Retro achievements, again, this is where you would go ahead and set up retro achievements if you didn't do it during the configuration. This is where you can go ahead and migrate your installation. And then the rest of these are just to fetch log files, look at the change log, completely uninstall, or become a patron and donate to the EmuDeck team. All right, now that we've got all that done, we're going to go ahead and jump into the Steam ROM Manager, which is another part of the incredible sauce that is EmuDeck. So we're going to go ahead and launch that. It's going to tell you we're going to need to exit Steam to launch it. We're going to click yes. And now we're into the Steam ROM Manager. So this is going to allow you to parse games. And if you look at this, this is going to be all of those consoles that I showed you in the ROM directory. What I highly suggest you do is actually disable this, and what you're going to want to do is only turn on the ones that you want to appear in SteamOS. The rest of them are all going to appear in EmulationStation, but these are the ones that are going to be added to your Steam library and are going to appear in SteamOS. So I would suggest you do this for games that you want to play often, games you want to play regularly. You can still access them through EmulationStation, but these are ones that are going to appear directly within the gaming handheld mode of SteamOS. So first thing, always have EmulationStation on. If you want to have the emulators appear in there as their own thing, you can do that as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm only going to add, let's see here. We're going to do Yuzu, and we're going to do Nintendo 64. All right. And what you're going to do now is you're going to click preview. Now, if you want, you can adjust settings, and up to you to change the theme. The theme doesn't really matter. You can remove all the app entries and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to go ahead, and now we're going to go to preview. Once you go to preview, you're going to click parse, and it's going to go ahead and it's going to look through all of those folders and find the games that are within there, and it's going to give them all their titles. So as you can see, we got 62 games in here. This includes some of the emulators. Now with this here, if you do want to change any of the images, you can go ahead and click on this little search icon. It'll bring up all of the images. If it's grabbing the wrong one, for example, you can go ahead and change it. In this case, it was grabbing the right one, so we're fine. You can also go ahead and add your own directly from local storage, which is great. You can make it so that it refreshes the image, and you can download the images yourself as well. Now, another really great thing is that you can exclude certain games here from being added before you add them. So say, you know, I don't want all of these on my Steam Deck. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go exclude. I'm going to exclude this one. I don't even know what it is. Civil contract. Don't know what that is. We're going to exclude that one. We're going to go ahead and exclude Rayman 2. And we're going to exclude Turok Hunter from the N64. All right. So we're going to go ahead and click save. That is now going to remove them from the list, so they will not be added. As you can see here, we have Super Mario 3D World. The image has been removed for DMCA purposes. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and click that search icon. And we're going to find Super Mario 3D World. And we're going to save and close that. And now it's going to apply Super Mario 3D World. So we're good to go. Once you have this exactly as you want it, you can go ahead and click Save to Steam. You're going to see on the top right hand corner, it's going to say that it's doing the batch of adding all these things in there. And once it's done, then you're good to go. You can go ahead and close all of this. And now what we're going to do is we're going to hop directly into gaming mode. Updating EmuDeck is just as simple as launching it. It's always going to go ahead and search for updates when it starts. And if it's going to download an update, it'll download it automatically for you. All right, so once you go ahead and get into your gaming mode, you can go ahead and hop on over to your library. Now, launching a game is super simple. We can go ahead and launch any of our games, press play just like you're playing any Steam game, and it'll go ahead and launch that title. Now, you can either press the Steam button and go to exit, or you can go ahead and press the select and start, and that will close the game and the emulator at the same time. Now, in certain systems, you can go ahead and change the upscaler. If you press start and you do up, you can go all the way up. And if you press down, you can go down. Now, this can make games look really, really great. As you can see, Ratchet & Clank's main menu at native resolution doesn't look too great. But if you go ahead and up it to 2 or even 3 times, it gets much cleaner, and a lot of games will be able to run perfectly fine at these upscaled resolutions. So games are super easy to get in and out of, but the super important thing is EmulationStation. So all of the games that we did not include in our parse for the ROM manager, they will still be included in EmulationStation. So as you can see here, I've got 23 games for the PS2, I've got 6 games for the PlayStation, 2 games for the Wii, 8 games for the Switch, 11 games for the GameCube. And when we were doing our parse, we were only really doing the N64 and the Switch. So these have all the rest of them, and if I go ahead and jump into these, you'll be able to see all of my games. Now you can go into the menu here, and you can go into the scraper, and you can change how it's scraping all of these images. I would highly suggest you create a screen scraper account and set that up. It's free, it's awesome, it does a really good job of grabbing images. If you want to change your theme, you can go ahead to Theme Downloader. Once it goes ahead and downloads the list, it shouldn't take very long. You can see all of these really awesome themes, lots of really cool ones. There's a whole bunch. I really like the way that a lot of these look, and it's really nice that they have all of this awesome customization. But we're going to go with the Epic Noir. We're going to change to Epic Noir. Now, if I go ahead and go back, it's now going to change that theme. And as you can see here, now the theme is entirely different. We can hop into any of these, and if we do a proper scraping, we'll be able to get our game images here. So because we didn't do any scraping, it's not going to be there. So we're going to have to go to scraper. We're going to choose our systems to scrape. This one will take quite a while. So again, go get some water, go take a quick little walk, get out of your chair for a couple minutes, come back. In maybe 5-10 minutes, this one should be done. It all depends on how many games you're scraping. All right, once you go ahead and scrape, you will be able to see the game titles. So I stopped it midway through, but as you can see with GoldenEye, it gives you a cover art, gives you those awesome things. It even shows you gameplay. This is really, really cool. You can change the way that all this works, and it all is dependent on the theme. But EmulationStation is a really good way to manage all the rest of those games. And like I said, using SteamOS to only do the favorite ones. And then if you're going to bring this over to someone's house and have a whole bunch of retro games, this is an easy way to manage all of that. I like trying to keep my Steam library clean. So if you go ahead and bring up the right menu on our Steam Deck, which since I'm using an Xbox controller is going to be the Xbox button and A, you can see that we have Decky here and we have Power Tools. This is what allows you to do a lot of customizations, and some of these things are very handy when emulating certain systems. So be sure to check these out. It is a very handy tool. And that's really it. One of the other really exciting things that the EmuDeck team is working on is a version of this for Windows that'll make things way simpler for people. EmulationStation and RetroArch do make it very easy, but the configurations and all that kind of stuff, having all of that built in and having a tool that helps you manage it all is really awesome. So I'm very excited for that. With that in mind, I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that it helped you out. If it did, I'd really appreciate if you like, subscribed. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, let me know down in the comment section below. Let me know what systems you're planning to emulate, what kind of games you want to play. I've been really enjoying playing through the Paper Mario series on my Steam Deck while I'm traveling for work, and it has been a great companion. Big thanks to my patron sponsors, ThoughtSlime and StepBack, and thank you for watching to the end of this video. If you do want to check out any of my other videos about the Steam Deck, you can go ahead and check them out right up here. As always, stay safe out there. I'll see you next Saturday.